Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I'm your host, Mary Katharine Ham. I'm here with my co-host, Vic Mattis. As always, except the last couple of weeks of the Washington Free Beacon, we have no breaking news about us, but we are doing an episode for you because we have so much breaking news about everything else. And so since it is our intention to continue, we're continuing right now. We got a lot of stuff. We got, just war in Iran. The mullahs maybe on their heels. We got a split within the MAGA right ? About foreign policy. We have the Army 250. We have the LA riots, which have now mostly, I think, calmed down. We have the No Kings rallies. We got Randy Weingarten out at the DNC, the head of the DNC in disarray, and a giant SCOTUS ruling for common sense. So that's a show right there, Vic. But before we get to all that, how you doing?
Hello, Mary Katharine. It's so nice to see you and hear your voice. And it's great to have our listeners back. And then we'll talk to our listeners for our Labor Day special next coming out. No, we promise we're going to try to get back before that.
We like to podcast like the French. We just take the whole summer off.
Yes. How many podcasts do you know are actually quarterly? That's what I want to know. It's your favorite quarterly podcast, Getting Hammered.
And boy, are we worth it.
Yes. No, I mean, it's really worth waiting those 3 months. I do have some breaking news for you.
Okay.
Which is there's a book coming out. It's called Original Sin. And it's supposed to contain some real bombshells.
Okay.
You won't believe what they say about President Biden.
I'm writing that down.
Yeah. And apparently President Biden's stepping down.
Oh,
stepping
okay.
down. Okay.
Good to know.
No.
I have some breaking news also.
What do you have?
Elon and Trump
Yes.
broke up forever.
What?
Except the forever happened while we were on hiatus, and now they're kind of hanging out again.
He loves me. He loves me not. He loves me. Okay. So really quickly on my end, since people, I know we're just dying to find out, how did that 30th reunion go for me?
I am dying to find that out.
Well, you know what? The starvation worked out for me.
Good.
I was able to fit into my clothes. And
you know what?
Yes.
I will say, I was seeing y'all in the video, and I was like, he looks trim, and I had forgotten about the reunion.
Yes.
So it all worked out.
It was worth it. No, it was a lovely time. And let me just say, here's my big observation. Now, I think I was saying, I'm just going to stick with my friends and that's it, because I don't want to end up in conversations with people. I don't want to end up as if I don't like people. But no, people came up to me that I haven't seen in a long time, and it was great to catch up with everybody.
Nice.
And here's my big observation, and it'll be interesting for you years from now when you go to your 30th as well. There were classmates of ours, and I confirmed this with my friends at the reunion, classmate of ours who, when we were 22, looked like they were 52, right? They're like people who when you're 20, they look like old people.
Yes.
And now that we're 52, they look like they're 52.
Yes.
Like they haven't changed.
This is the Betty White trick.
Oh, yes. And Yogi Berra, apparently.
Yeah. You just look old at 30, and then you look great for the rest of your life.
Right. So nobody looked ancient. They just looked the same age. And you could literally say to somebody like, wow, you haven't changed at all. And it's really a compliment. It's a compliment to them. And some people have decided to go the full bore, shave head thing, and people who are more white haired than others. But, everybody looked great. It was very nice to see everybody.
Awesome.
So that was it. I did see Nora O'Donnell. I did not say hi to her. I passed her. I passed her in the tent. Yes. How are you?
I am
You
good.
look well.
Thank you. I know. Well, I am trying to be in the gym more because I'd kind of gotten off course, and I'm also doing some healthy workouts with my kids. So that's fun, just to keep everybody. They stay active anyway because we let them run around the neighborhood. But I'm doing a couple strength/physical therapy things that we need some help with. Both my daughter and I have somewhat flat feet, and there are specific exercises you can do for that.
I thought you were going to say scoliosis, because that seems to be every woman I know.
No, I don't. I do not have that, but I have overpronation is what they call that. And so we're working on fixing that. But I've been in the gym a lot, and that has been fun. I know everyone is dying for an update on what the babies have destroyed in the nursery. So in the nursery, in the intervening time while we have been gone, one day I was out of town and I got a picture from Steve of the babies in the nursery, and every square inch, it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. Every square inch of the hardwood was covered in Desitin.
Wow. They
And
polished it. This is like a
Mhm.
frat hazing thing going
Yes,
on here.
I don't know if you've ever smelled Desitin. I mean,
Yes.
you have, like, but
Yes. Yeah.
it would bring back memories very
Yes.
quickly
It's
if you smelled it.
distinct.
It's distinct. Steve woke up on like a Saturday morning while I was out of town with a headache because the Desitin is coming through the
It's
vent. And I was like, I didn't even know they had Desitin in there. And it turns out it was buried in one of the top drawers. There were 2 full tubes of it, and it went
yes. I mean,
everywhere.
again, the same thing. And, they can fashion themselves a shiv at this point.
No, I mean, they are
Yeah.
quite impressive. There's
Yeah.
I know you guys think I'm dropping the ball here, but like there's nothing in that room. There's nothing in the room. So
Yeah.
anyway, but apparently there was Desitin buried in
Wow.
one of the drawers under the clothing. So they find that, they make a mess of the whole room, the walls, the I'm sure it's on the carpet as well, but specifically it was on the curtains in large amounts. And so we cleaned, Steve took care of everything because again, I was gone for this, but we were smelling Desitin for like a week and a half and then some. And I have a sensitive nose because I could still smell it when I walked in there. And so I was like, well, we just need new curtains. So I ordered new curtains and just tossed the old ones. And of course, I was like, I'm going to search for adorable curtains. And I searched for adorable curtains and I got adorable curtains with adorable tassels on them. And Steve was like, they're going to just rip the tassels off,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
And I was like, yeah, I know.
Again,
And
padded room. You need padded room.
but look, you can't get cute curtains for kids without things on them. There's things. So I put them in there, and now I'm just playing a game where I gather the tassels that they pull off and pile them on my bedside table as a lesson to me about how I can't give them anything. We can't have nice things.
Well, the thing with the Desitin is that takes a lot of effort to do. I mean, it's great. I mean, they're keeping busy.
Yeah, no,
That's good.
I choose to think of it as ingenuity.
Yes. It reminds me of another one of our favorite movies, Real Genius, with Val Kilmer, when they turned the dormitory into a winter wonderland. That'll be next. They'll be sledding in there.
I wish it were more fun than Desitin, honestly. So that's that. Now that the Desitin has been removed, they've taken to removing the tassels and or just dumping all the clothes out of their dresser, which is really like, who cares at this point? I just have them throw them back in the dresser when they're done.
Amazing.
They also are at their first week of camp together. They have a little half-day camp at a church nearby, and we wanted especially the youngest to be able to go because he's going to go to preschool a little bit next year, and he's never
practice.
He's never done the drop-off thing. He's never done the full structured event, and so we are doing that. And I had a suspicion that my little mama's boy was going to be a tough drop-off, and he is.
Really?
He is.
The attachment thing?
Yes. He's both a tough drop-off and a tough pickup, bless his heart. So the first day, we had our lovely au pair take him because we decided that me doing it would probably be more traumatic.
Right.
So we had her do it, sent the big sisters along so that they could be moral support.
They're going together. Yeah.
He went in fine the first day.
Good.
He was excited. Apparently during that day, from what we can gather from his elementary language, is that his sister totally ditched him and gave him no moral support. Which
happens.
That sounds right. He's like, I cry, Holly leave.
Oh.
So, okay. So she ditched him. Can't count on her. When we picked him up, he lost it. I think it was just like he had this a lot of big fun times.
Oh, okay.
And no familiar faces. And then as soon as somebody walked up, it was like, woo.
Crying because he didn't want to leave, or crying because he was reminded that you were away?
He was overwhelmed with emotion to see his family. The second day, he cries at drop off and pick up. The third day we're working on, and he cried at drop off. We'll see what happens at pick up. And the funny thing is, no matter who picks him up, he cries for another person. So
yes, okay. Well, I mean, this is not like an overnight sleepaway camp, so that's
he's
but it is good practice.
He's there for 3 hours.
Yeah,
that's right. I think he's gonna make it. But they say that he has tons of fun while he's there, and I choose to believe that.
Yes, I'm sure. No, I mean, one of the things is I know with our kids, my daughter, because she was young, she got to see that my son was going to school, and she definitely wanted in on that. Like, what's going on? I want to get on that bus, and she was she was more excited, I think, than he was about, like
Yeah, I mean,
going to school.
you can
If they see their siblings do that, I think it
yes, I
helps.
think he's excited in theory.
Yeah.
And you can read your kids. I had a feeling he was going to be tougher than her
Yeah.
for dropping off. I had the same dynamic with my first one did not care one whit about me.
Right. I'm ready to go.
And the second one was like a little bit trickier to warm up,
Yeah,
but once she
yeah.
warmed up, she was fine.
Right.
So he's on his way. He is my baby though. So
Yeah.
am I a
It
little
would
bit
be tough for
comforted?
you. Yeah.
Am I a little bit comforted that he wants to stay with me? Yes, I
Yes.
am. Yes, I am. But I will
Well,
not baby him. He's out there at water camp
that's what
playing
you
in a
s-
sprinkler like he should be.
That's what you say. But all youngest kids get babied,
I know.
even when they're old,
I
because
know.
there's no other baby. So anyway,
Well, we shall see. His sisters won't baby him, so
good.
certainly not
That's
his
true. No,
his- certainly not his
that'd be
Irish
kind of
twin.
weird later on.
his Irish twin
Yes.
takes no pity on him.
Yeah.
No mercy. Oh, speaking of which, no mercy from him either, because in the room last night, when the two of them were having their prison riot instead of going to bed, she's flipping out. And I go in there and I realize she wears like little hair ties around her wrists like I do. And she really likes to have them in their specific colors. And, she's a little obsessive compulsive going on here. And so
Who isn't? Yeah.
She either lost them or she handed them to him to play with from the top bunk,
Right.
and he wouldn't give them back, and she's losing it. And she's instructed to stay in bed, and all of a sudden she wants to follow that instruction. So she's staying up there and not getting her bracelets back. And I go in and I realize what she's saying. And I look for the bracelets and I can't find them. And I open the vent. He put them in the vent. So she couldn't get them.
Wow.
So they're both savage, is what I'm saying.
Serious plotting going on.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
magical. Siblings are magical.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we do the news?
Let's do it.
Alrighty.
Assuming there is news.
I think there is, Vic.
I
think
kept on
there's some
making
news.
jokes about this to our so many listeners, by the way, who were like, please come back. They sounded like Kate Winslet at the end of Titanic. Come back. Come back. And so we hear, and including listeners with kids saying that the kids wanted to, where we are, where are Mary, Katharine, and Vic. So here we are, and you can play us on a loop throughout the whole summer.
Look, we're working on it.
Yeah,
this is like
we are.
This is like
For real.
rehoming a puppy. You
that's-
you got to find the right fit.
Yeah. And right now we're in a kennel.
We
Okay.
are.
With Phil. Phil is still taking care of us.
Thank you, Phil.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So Iran, should we talk a little bit about that?
Yes, let's do.
So it's been about a week now, actually.
Tonight it would.
Since Israel started bombing Iranian missile sites and various nuclear capability sites. Once again, Israeli intelligence has proven to be very good. I'm sure they have help from us too, but one thing about this whole situation is that I simply enjoy watching people do the jobs they're supposed to do extremely well.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like it happens that much anymore. And of course, October 7th was a huge intel failure and a failure of imagination and military for Israel, which was devastating. And so to watch them regain confidence in this way has been really exhilarating. I mean, they're doing amazing things. So they had info first about where missiles might come from to retaliate against them. They had already taken out a bunch of those sites a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm.
They launched this strike, and among the things they did was anticipate exactly what the retaliation would be and try to take out that retaliation preemptively so that it could not happen, including, by the way, I just want to read this because it is amazing. Israeli Secret Service operatives used a fake phone call to trigger what appeared to be an emergency meeting among Iran's top military leaders and then targeted the location of the meeting. According to a report published Tuesday by the Jewish Chronicle, this is also reported in the Daily Wire, Mossad used Iranian communication channels as part of a coordinated disinformation campaign targeting top Iranian Air Force officials, luring them all to the same location for what they believed was an important meeting. Amit Segal told Dan Senor on the Call Me Back podcast, what Israel did was create a fake phone call for 20 members of the Air Force senior staff and call them to a specific bunker in Tehran. This meant that no one was there to give the order to fire the initial salvo of 1,000 ballistic missiles, as Iran had previously threatened to do.
They did it again. How in this country kids go to school, you got to pick a foreign language. And, I think a lot of kids choose Spanish
Right.
is like the most popular option. If you're in Israel, are the two most popular options like Arabic and Farsi?
I mean,
Because, to be able to do that, is really impressive. And again, they did it where they yet again lured on. And these were like aerial commanders, I think, who were brought into this bunker, and then they blew up the bunker. Yeah, it's so impressive because they've been planning this. The Israelis have been keep thinking about this from the very beginning. So in the early 2000s, as soon as there was this notion that Iran wants to get the bomb, and they were on their way to doing so, and they were going to, drag out negotiations and talks with, Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, and then back to Trump again. Netanyahu knew that, a clock was ticking. And so they had to think about, okay, let's get this started now, because really good infiltration takes a long time to plan for, as you know, with the pagers, with Hamas, and now we're seeing what's happening in Iran, where we essentially have air superiority there. It's truly impressive, and it's a combination of the IDF and the Mossad. I had this thought about, how the Mossad is perceived by its enemies, and it's I think that it's pretty terrifying. I knew a guy who was a human officer, human intelligence, and he told me once about dealing with a terror suspect, and all they did was suggest that they might, transfer him to Mossad, and the guy just, was like, okay, what do you want to know, and because he didn't know who the guy was. It's really, really interesting how terror suspects.
Well, and I feel like in the past 15, 20 years, many of those storied organizations that one would hope operate in that way and whose reputations should be respected have fallen short. And you sort of hear the inner workings, or see the inner workings. Our own intel community during the first Trump administration comes to mind. And you go, this is not what I had hoped was inside the intel community of the United States. So again, that's why I say to see them operate at this level has been heartening.
Right.
And, like you said, this has been at least 20 years in the making. I truly never understood the Obama take on this. It never made sense to me. In what way are you limiting their ability to create a nuclear weapon by allowing them to get closer to creating a nuclear weapon and also giving them a bunch of cash? That seemed counterintuitive to me.
Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois was recently interviewed about this and said, yes, he believes Iran should not get a bomb, as the majority of Americans don't think Iran should have a bomb. And then he went on to say, but he opposes the airstrikes. There are, other ways, diplomatic ways to prevent them, just as we did during the Obama administration.
Right.
And Ben Rhodes, who's very upset about
by making
this
wild ass deals. This is, again, deals for the sake of making deals. It was very clear that the JCPOA, which is the name of that deal that the Obama administration made with Iran, the point was to get a deal. That was, to him,
and
that
to tout
meant
it.
That meant success. That meant peace in some way.
Right.
The desire
it would vindicate his getting the Nobel Peace Prize too.
Right. The desire, which I love that he got that
like
before he did work.
Yeah.
The guy, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that the drive to get the deal was so great that there were even plenty of Americans in Iranian custody that could have been treated as part of this deal making, and he just left them there. Because the idea was to get the deal, not to get Americans. Those were the priorities. Ben Rhodes, as you note, of course, created this famous media echo chamber on behalf of the JCPOA, which would not have passed the Senate and House in any form. I believe it was voted down, in fact, at one point, in the House at least. It just never made any sense to me.
No.
And then during the Biden administration, after JCPOA has been taken out by Trump, in the Biden administration, you find out that there's just like Iranian plants all over the government.
Yeah.
Which then makes me wonder, what is behind this plan?
Yeah. Yeah,
like,
exactly.
What's happening?
No, when Trump had taken over, of course, he issued heavy sanctions, and Iran was, as he says, on the verge of bankruptcy. And then we restore that under Obama and under Biden with these pallets of cash. Pallets of hundreds of millions of dollars
just
of
cash going into
which
the
they're saying,
regime.
this is not going to bad things. They said this is going to help them with. It'll help them with the good things, and I'm sure that doesn't free up the money that they would have spent on, food or aid or whatever it is.
Yeah. Money's not
to use
fungible. Cash is
on
not
their
fungible. Don't worry about it.
terrorist proxies. Yeah, that they wouldn't use it. Mary Catherine,
Mhm.
were you surprised by the Trump turn? Because he had been saying, I want to make a deal. Let's make a deal. He was kind of opposed to an Israeli airstrike,
Right.
obviously directly against Iran. And then suddenly he's on their side and he says, and two words that I had thought about that very day, unconditional surrender. What do you
Right.
think?
So here's my question.
Yeah.
A lot of people say that the 60 days of negotiation that Trump was doing via Steve Witkoff with the Iranian regime was a ruse.
Wow. Yeah.
That he and Netanyahu were working together to put that forward publicly, to leak strategically, to make it look as if Trump was not on board when he was actually on board.
Right.
I would love your thoughts on this. I'm not sure I totally buy
Yeah.
that this was a ruse from the beginning, because Trump is a changeable man. And Trump also likes the idea of making deals. So I would not be surprised if he was sincerely into making this deal. Bibi came to him with intel that changed his mind, or the Iranians were being intransigent enough that he was annoyed. And then I do love Matthew Continetti's theory, our friend who is on the commentary podcast, who said he thinks Bibi, when Bibi called and reminded him that the 60 days were up, he was like, hey, wait a second. I did tell them they had 60 days.
Yeah.
And look, no matter how it happened, he made the right decision by not holding Netanyahu back, by being morally clear about how this is a problem, and that he's always thought it was a problem. I do think he's always thought it was a problem.
Yeah.
He's been clear about that.
He's been
throughout.
very consistent.
It's just his approach to how he would deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
He's been, very, very ambitious in his rhetoric, or very clear in his rhetoric about the Iranian regime since this all popped off.
Right.
So yeah, I'm wondering what you do. Do you think it was a ruse from day one? I loved him adopting the look, I said 60 days and it's day 61.
Right. And taking him seriously, not literally, or literally not seriously, this whole thing. Everyone's trying to, go into the whole, the criminology behind this. I think that his opinions were always changeable. I think the 60 days were there. I mean, I think that during that time, had Iran said, okay, yes, we want to make a deal, then I think Trump would have been open to that. But I think the Israelis knew absolutely there was no chance they would ever want to give up the ability to enrich uranium at that level, which is way above what's needed for nuclear energy, of course. You can only do that pure for one particular reason. And then people are pushing back and saying that, well, what about Israel? What about the United States? Well, all these other countries that have nuclear weapons. Iran has said they want to wipe Israel off the map, and they're enriching uranium, and no one's denying that to a very high level. How do you think they want to wipe Israel off the map exactly?
Also, all of these other places have had nukes for long periods of time and not deployed them.
Including India and Pakistan, and of course Israel. It's being used by them as a deterrent.
Yes.
And I just don't think that's the case with Iran. I think they want to get their way.
No.
They really hate Israel.
And they really hate America.
And they hate America.
That's the other thing, is that the slogan's death to America. They're not shy about it. Israel and America, they see as tied together, as they should, because we should be tied together as free Western countries. Mm-hmm. And they also have repeatedly killed and injured our soldiers in other areas of the globe
for decades.
I have friends who walk around on prosthetic limbs thanks to Iranian meddling. I mean, this is not a secret.
Yeah.
We do have interests in these folks, and we can talk a little bit about the idea of a rift, because look, there are certainly people. I think the American people are very with Donald Trump on the idea that Iran should not have a bomb.
Yeah,
it's like 80%. Harry Enton was doing his regular weekly, let me tell you some polling numbers you absolutely won't believe about Donald Trump, and because you're a CNN viewer. And the most recent
jaw-dropping
was 70 to 80% believe that Iran should not have a bomb, and solidly 73% overall thought that airstrikes would be fine to
Yeah.
take out their capabilities.
Right.
American airstrikes. So there isn't really a rift among the American people, which is
No. Again, this is not, Operation, Enduring Freedom,
yes.
and we're not talking about sending troops into Iran to occupy Iran to set up and topple regime. We hope the Iranian people are able to do that. And one of the things I think is really interesting is when you see that the IDF is bombing, security police headquarters,
Right.
if there was a way to, free all the prisoners from even prison, I mean, that would be amazing. I don't know how that works at this point.
I saw also an update today from a pretty reliable source that the satellite signal for Iran's state-run television
Mhm.
has been hacked at times throughout
Yes.
this with anti-regime messaging and videos and women showing their hair,
Yes, the hashtag
calling for
women
freedom
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
revolution. So, and the Iranian people are, I am not an expert on them, but there is living memory of a much different kind of society there.
Yeah.
They are much more pro-Western
Right.
than perhaps some other countries, citizenries.
Yeah.
And yes, so we hope for that. But there are people in the administration, including Vance, who's very hesitant to use American force abroad.
Sure.
Elbridge Colby is the other
Yeah.
big one at defense. But I think for me, I'm much more like with the 73% of American people for this reason. And I'm not saying that those two are against Trump. They're clearly not.
Right.
But that's where the rift
Yeah.
would be.
Right.
I think Trump has a good record of bombing the crap out of somebody
Yeah.
and coming back home. That's
Yeah, no, that's
not
his, that's
concerned.
that's his sort of version of being sort of this quote unquote neo-isolationist is that
Yes.
we don't want, boots in the ground and being a world's policeman per se, but whenever our interests are at stake, we will do what it takes and hit you hard and then go back. But it has to be decisive. I can't help but think that folks like General Kurilla at CENTCOM or other advisors who now have Trump's ear have sort of given him this image in his mind that imagine you being the president to preside over the toppling of the Ayatollah's regime, which has been in power and oppressing its own people since 1979. Imagine that it only happened under you and the Israelis did all the hard work. And I think a lot of countries feel that way and they're beginning to be open about it.
That's one point I wanted to make, and you might know more about this.
No.
But it does seem like the dog that didn't bark, that Russia, China, they're all being quite muted about this.
Yeah, that's right. Everybody likes a winner, right? They peace through strength is something that we talk about now lately that's come back, especially in the region in the Middle East. Anytime that there's a willingness to say, can't we be friends? Can't we compromise, make peace? What will it take for you to come to the table? And they're like, don't you know we want, conquest? That's what we want, domination or the end of the Zionist state. And they think of that as weakness and they take us for fools.
Right.
So they recognize the strength. Israel is displaying that, and they did so decisively, where all of a sudden all this talk about the Iranians and having this great military power, it turns out that they've been totally defanged, right? And now they're essentially powerless. They had, as of a few days ago, less than 2,000 missiles left after they fired them. Then what? Maybe a third or more than a third of the truck launchers for them have been destroyed.
This is
which is key because you can have all the missiles you want, but if you can't launch them, it's all about those launchers.
Well, and this is another thing we should point out is that, the people of Israel, of course, have been living under this onslaught of ballistic missiles.
Yeah.
But thanks to the competence of the IDF and Intel, they are able to, each time ballistic missiles come in, and these poor mothers are in their bomb shelters with their children 3 times a night, because of Iron Dome, because they can intercept, because they can target where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Each time ballistic missiles come, my understanding is that there are fewer that can come because A, they're using missiles, B, they have fewer launching capabilities. So
that's right.
I think go ahead.
No, I was just gonna hold your thought, which is when you asked me about how these other countries are reacting to this and China and Russia. Hezbollah also said, they can fight their own fight. We're not going to get into this one. Not that there's much that they can do at this point, because they talked about people who were talking about World War III are talking about, the U.S. getting dragged into a war with Iran that drags in China and Russia. And okay, fine, that is a very serious conflagration. That has not been the case so far. And again, they're seeing now that Iran is the weak state, and there's talk about officials from Iran who are already seeking asylum in Russia. And Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany, has said that Israel is doing the dirty work for all of us and they should be thanked. because this has been a terrible, a regime that is, what did he say? It has brought death and destruction to the world, and that we are also victims of this regime. So again, beyond the region of the Middle East, everybody looks for the winner. Everybody looks for the strong horse. And at the moment, it's Israel. And it's sort of like wondering, when's the last time any country has fought to win versus fought to, okay, now let's, it would be like reaching the bunker and then knocking on the door in Berlin and say, okay, now we can talk.
Yeah, let's back off.
I think he's done. And Israel's defense minister said that the Ayatollah can no longer stay in power at this point. I mean, he is 86, older than Biden. I'd like to point that out. And after a missile hit a hospital, they're not going to tolerate it anymore. So, I mean, this is what's going to happen. My only concern, Mary Catherine, is in salvaging the wreckage of this particular missile. It looks like the reentry vehicle was what you call a MIRV, right? A multiple independent reentry vehicle. In other words, one that would contain multiple warheads. You do wonder how far along they were in developing nukes, because once they have the actual delivery vehicle assembled, the ICBM, then it can go a very long distance, including threatening, as Friedrich Merz says, Europe or beyond. And I hope it is not the case that the Israelis have somehow missed a spot, if you will, and they have one nuke. Because everyone's saying, no, they're far from it. It's all talk. It's not going to happen. It seems pretty clear to me they're pretty far along, and it's not just for nuclear energy per se.
Well, and one wonders if that's the information that they got that precipitated this. I do think I have always known that the Arab countries surrounding Iran are not going to be loud about the fact that they want this program knocked out too.
Not, but
they're just like, oh no, don't do that.
Right, we condemn.
We technically condemn, but they're happy to have that wiped out, those capabilities wiped out. In addition, many of the Abraham Accords countries surrounding Israel have been knocking ballistic missiles out of the air.
They have, like in Jordan.
On behalf of Israel. As you note, the strong horse is very important, and Iran does not look like it right now. And I also think there have been several times, well, there are many times that liberals tell me that World War III will happen because of Trump, but 2 times in particular as relate to the Middle East. One, when they moved the embassy, and everyone was like, this will be a conflagration. The Arab street will not have it.
Yeah.
It will be over. Maybe not World War III, but it was going to be a huge deal.
Oh, yeah. You're really going to upset them.
I thought, I don't know. I feel like we should acknowledge that the Knesset is in Jerusalem and this is capital. And we did. And then the dogs didn't bark. Right. The other one was Captain Soleimani.
Yeah, who, by the way, where was he when he was capped? He was in Iraq.
He was in Iraq. He was in Iraq. What was he doing there? Just some tourism in Iraq? Yeah, he was there to do harm to our soldiers and civilians on the ground as well, of course. But remember, I actually was at a very DC event, I believe hosted by the UAE that night, that included a lot of establishment foreign policy thinkers. The night that the Soleimani thing happened, I think it broke while we were at this dinner, and everyone there was really very, very, very concerned about where this would go. And I was like, I don't know, let's let this play out because
it was very, very Catherine of you.
Yeah, well, because of it was actually post moving the embassy. I thought, well, everyone keeps saying these acts of, I call it the Trump doctrine of occasional bellicosity. He's just like, ticked off, boom, right? It's a little unpredictable. It's quick. We have the capabilities to do it, and you do it, and then you're done.
Right.
And it does send a message. And Soleimani sent a message to the Iranians. This now, his backing of Israel is sending a message to the Iranians. If the job gets finished, possibly with our help, it sends a message to everyone who would like to develop a nuke, everyone in that situation, that we have a credible threat.
Yeah.
And credible threat is the thing we did not have and lost completely under Biden.
Yeah, that's right. It's also worth remembering how this all came up, and it goes back to October 7th. And the whole reason for this culmination of this conflict right now is because of the Abraham Accords, because Israel and the Saudis were edging closer to normalized relations, which was totally joked about and downplayed by the previous Obama administration, saying, "Oh, great, your airline can travel there, big whoop." But it was a big deal. And the Iranians saw that and realized that they're going to get pushed out of this in their attempt to dominate the region. So they're going to do something terrible, which is exactly what happened. But now that they found out the hard way that this was a terrible idea for them to have,
Yeah.
aided Hamas and Hezbollah after October 7, and then, of course, engaging with Israel, we're talking about, post Ayatollah, post Mullah regime in Iran having the Saudis and the Israelis back on the same page again and bringing stability to the Middle East. I'm sure this is something that Mohammed bin Salman wants, and the Israelis were interested. And also with a different government in Iran, prior to the revolution, Iran and Israel were very close, under the Shah. I'm not saying that they bring the Shah, the current Shah in exile back, the son of the late Shah, but that's for them to decide. But again, I mean, that's where they are.
Well, in Iran, the Iranian people at least two times in my, working career in politics have risen up, and it would seem like a moment for them right now. I believe the last time was like just a handful of years ago.
Yeah.
I'm misplacing the date, but maybe 2022.
Yeah.
And then there was one in like
2008.
Yeah, 2000. That's
Green Revolution.
Green Revolution, by the way, I wrote a piece for the Weekly Standard.
Yeah.
Which, maybe it will eventually, it proved to be right and then very wrong, and then maybe it will prove to be right
No,
again.
you're gonna make it full circle, Katharine.
I wrote a piece in the Weekly Standard, lauding the virtues of social media,
right?
Because of things like the Green Revolution, and right now, Elon's got his Starlink over Iran. They can't cut off the people.
No.
And so even though social media has done terrible things, maybe it will come back.
No, I mean,
having done good things.
It would be great. I mean, another interesting thing is, of course, Iran no longer has Syria as an ally in all of this because Assad is gone as well. I was thinking about Trump as, not only presiding over the toppling of this terrible regime, right? But also, you can't help but think that Trump is really curious about how that bunker buster is going to work and dropping it from a B-2. Yes. It's a big bomb. He likes them big. 30,000 pounds.
That is such a correct take on Trump.
He wants to see. He's just curious. And frankly, I'm kind of curious too.
This is like
do the job.
This is like when you were absolutely right about the ring of Trump fans.
Oh, yes, that's right.
This is part of the way the things get graded.
That's right. And also, they think the B-2s can do the job. And I'm sure the people have made this observation or joke, but if they can't, then you would need a very skillful pilot of an F-18 to fly through the mountains and drop a bomb into a little hatch. It can be done. It could be a very seasoned pilot towards the end of his career. Maybe he's looking for redemption.
One last mission.
Just going to say. Okay.
Let's get him out there.
Yes.
Okay, hold on.
So that's my thought. No. I was going to say, but my thought. Oh, by the way, we're done now. Show's over.
No. I was going to say, we're spending way too much time on this.
I know.
But
okay, really I'm done.
Look, we got to get in what we can get in.
So, by the way, did you have thoughts about Tucker versus Cruz?
No, that's what I was going to ask.
Okay, all right, let's do it. All right.
Okay, Tucker v. Cruz.
Don't you miss us?
I haven't watched the whole thing, but Tucker is the rift. That he's the embodiment of the rift on the right about whether any sort of power should be used alongside Israel to do this.
Yes.
I am highly skeptical of his motives at this point and his sincerity. And Cruz went in.
You mean the Tucker, since like where he tilts his head and he squints his eye, saying, "Really?"
It used to work, but he went in and did this long interview with Ted Cruz about this.
Yes, a long interview
to hash out this rift. And among the things that went viral was this bit where he was asking him very specific questions about like Iran's what was it, the population, and which is like in the 8 to 9 million range, something like that.
No, it's
90.
Right.
90.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Please continue.
I know how tins work. Excuse me. Oh, Tucker's going to come after me now.
He's coming after you next.
But it's Israel that's very small. Iran, very big.
Israel's like the size of Jersey.
What's your take on this?
Okay.
Like, go ahead.
Okay. I get it. You're voting on something as a United States Senator that's very important, but on just the basis of why you would support an airstrike against Iran. Iran has been plotting the, death to America and the actively plotting an assassination of Donald Trump and wants to possess a nuclear weapon. And I'll points indicate to, including from the International Atomic Energy Agency, that, oh, they won't let us look at these facilities and we think that they're enriching way too much. Yeah, I don't know how many days they were away from getting a bomb, but it's pretty serious, and I think it warrants action to quiz Ted Cruz. And it went on. This, that part of that the big one that went viral.
Yeah.
The big question of how many, how many people live in Iran? What's the population of Iran? And Cruz says, I don't know. And then he says to Tucker, well, you tell me how many do you know? And Tucker immediately goes, 92 million. You know that he just looked that up. Mm-hmm. There's no way that it's just sitting in your head, the population of Iran. And it reminded me of a journalist, and I think he was from the Boston Globe at the time, when George W. Bush was running for president, and suddenly he's asking him, okay, well, who's the leader of India? Who's the leader of Taiwan? Who's the leader of the Chechens right now at this very moment? Right. And, oh, well, you don't know that it's whatever, General Makarov or whoever. And, oh, well, I guess you can't be president. I mean,
you know what? My kingdom for someone to have done that to Biden in the last year of his presidency. Just it. Like,
who's your Secretary of Defense?
He can't even do it with his own cabinet.
No, he couldn't.
He couldn't do it when the stuff was on the prompter in front of him.
Yeah.
No, I think, look, it's important to know things.
Yeah.
I like leaders who know things. Governor DeSantis is a perfect example of someone who just knows a lot of things, particularly when he's dealing with an issue. He's going to know all the things.
He's data driven.
You try to quiz Ron DeSantis, he's going to know all the things.
Yeah.
Ted Cruz, however, is an informed person.
Yeah.
Throughout this interview, he talks about many other things.
Oh.
I'm not sure that knowing the population is reflective of knowing the conflict.
Yeah.
And it's just, there were other parts of the interview where he was a very forceful arguer on behalf of American power, and a moment where actually we should mention this too, a moment where Tucker went into sort of moral relativity and saying all leaders kill people. And Cruz called him on it. It was like, so you're basically the View. He didn't say that, but you're basically the View.
Yeah.
Saying that Iran and America are equivalent. And then he backed up and was like, I'm not being more, I'm not a moral equivalent guy. I'm not a moral relativist. That's not me.
And that was the whole point of his pointing that out.
Yes. And so that part was, I thought, forceful and interesting. By the way, we should just play this wild ass clip of Whoopi Goldberg.
Oh, yes.
Quick. Okay. I'm going to pause for that. This is the View take on Iran.
But let's just remember too, the Iranians literally throw gay people off of buildings. They don't adhere to basic human rights.
Listen, here's the thing.
Let's
not do that, because if we start with that, we have been known in this country to tie gay folks to the car.
I'm sorry, but where the Iranian regime is today in 2025 is nothing compared to the United States.
Keep hanging black people. So
it is not even the same. I couldn't step foot during this.
Wait. That's not what you mean to say. It is the same.
No, it's not. The year 2025 in the United States is nothing like if I step foot wearing this outfit in Tehran.
Killed for
I'm
sorry.
Well, they were like around. No, I can't have my hair showing. I can't wear a skirt. I can't have my arms out.
I'm telling you,
I literally said it was up to the Iranian people.
Yes,
it is up to them.
And that's why I am saying that it is the same. Murdering someone for their difference is not good, whoever does it. It's not good. Listen, let me tell you about being in this country. This is the greatest country in the world. But, yeah, I know that. And we all know that. But every day, we are worried. Do we have to be worried about our kids? Are our kids going to get shot because they're running through somebody's neighborhood? They are not big deals, and I don't mean to say they're not big deals to you, because that's not what I meant.
And they are not doing well there either.
Yeah, I have trouble communicating how stupid and abhorrent this is.
Who clapped? That's what I want to know. Yes, Iran good.
I love
we were bad as Iran.
First of all, good on Alyssa. She gave it the college try here.
So and she was trying to speak from a perspective of experience, because she herself is of Iranian Persian descent. Is that correct?
Iranian and Lebanese, I believe.
Yes, that explains her hotness.
But
sorry, it's true. They are beautiful people. The women are very beautiful.
So
sorry.
Good on her. She gives it the old try here. Whoopi is immovable.
She's not having it.
It's just
you don't know, because it's like you're living in the 60s still.
Yeah.
And
this is a multi-million millionaire who's sitting at her cush job. And then she goes on to say, because I think she kind of realizes what she's doing. She goes on to say, this is my favorite part. It's the greatest country in the world. And also just like Iran.
I know.
Huh?
Yeah, Iran's a great country, especially for women. Yeah.
It is just a race to the bottom.
Yeah. It brings out the worst in people, obviously. Okay.
Okay. We just had to illustrate
What with
stupidity.
the Tucker versus the Cruz thing? Everyone's dunking on Cruz for this, and also, but again, it was a bit much. Also, the polls, Mary Catherine, you wanted to talk about some. But I think there's a rift, but most, still a lot of conservatives. There was a poll that recently came out that indicated, Americans are about split, on the airstrikes. New ones showed a little bit more, of a difference with people opposed to an airstrike now.
Right.
But certainly among Republicans, I've seen polls. I think it's called Gray Zone. I think it's a company that conducted the poll where most Trump supporters are very much supportive.
Yeah, again,
airstrikes.
I think the occasional
most Americans don't want Iran to have a bomb.
The occasional nut kicking from Trump to adversaries that are very clear, most people are fine with.
Yeah.
They're just fine with it.
That's right.
And I will listen with respect to those who say like, oh, this needs congressional authorization. I do think we too often do things without congressional authorization, but those are long conflicts that should have authorization. At any rate, we'll keep you posted as we can.
Yeah.
We should move on to some other topic.
All right. Do we
want to fit in one more before we?
Oh my gosh! I think we could fit in a couple more. Okay,
let's
people, listeners are like, please don't let this end. This has got to be like one of those special Gilligan Islands reunions.
It can
Brady Brides. We could stretch it out.
It can be. Let's lightning round it a little bit. Army 250. What did you think?
Oh, okay. First of all, I was at a dinner, so I missed it. But my son took video of Apache helicopters and Chinooks that flew right overhead. Directly above our backyard, beautiful. And I know this was a historical sort of, here's the United States Army from wearing in their colonial garb, mounted on horses. Then, Civil War, the doughboys, and of course, our GIs in World War II up to the present. That's amazing. I think the media was so disappointed that this didn't turn into sort of these Mussolini-like or Kim Jong-un-like fascist parade. And so then they flipped the script and said, "Oh, how pathetic it was!
So dumb."
Yeah, and Trump learns a lesson from the Army. But then other people, were just, again, how Trump drives people crazy. Stephen Colbert was gleeful that nobody showed up, quote, to his stupid parade. Stupid, yes, the Army celebrating its 250th birthday parade is stupid. So they were hoping for it. It didn't happen. So I think great for the Army.
Yeah. I think as we should note, a couple myth busts real quick. Just it wasn't Trump's birthday parade. His birthday falls on Flag Day and the 250th birthday.
Right.
Festivities for the 250th birthday of the Army had been planned under the Biden administration because there were going to be events regardless. Yep. And also another quick myth buster from our last segment. People are talking about how the warmongers just keep saying that Iran is a couple weeks from a bomb, and this is just their excuse.
Yeah.
They've been close to a bomb before and then been delayed by intelligence operations like Stuxnet and, various military operations and picking off scientists and that kind of thing. So I just want to put that out there.
Excellent. Would you have thoughts on No Kings?
Okay, yes.
DraftKings.
Well,
DraftKings?
First, I want to say it's sponsored by DraftKings.
No Kings, sponsored by DraftKings.
We are a country ruled by DraftKings. That's a real thing. So, first on the Army parade, I thought it was almost like comically benign compared to what people were saying. The guys in the tanks like waving and smiling to everyone. The air show part of it is extremely cool.
Yes.
Although I think if the weather had been better, there would have been more of that. But it was very nice. The different uniforms from different eras. Fantastic idea.
Wonderful.
I loved every second of it. I wish that security didn't have to be so tight so it was easier for people to get there. But there were still very large crowds. They just have to mag everybody because, this guy's been almost assassinated twice. So I thought it was great. I also loved the music because they would have music of different eras playing with different eras of uniforms, and just like watching guys march to Enter Sandman.
That's good.
In the middle of Washington.
Yes. People love that.
It's a very Trump
yeah.
moment. And by the way, I want to note Do you know how long Trump's speech was at
Oh,
his
right.
big birthday parade?
Right.
Because it was all about him.
Yes, it was all about him. And how long was it, Mary Catherine?
It was 8 minutes long.
8 minutes?
I looked it up.
Poor little Trump gave an 8-minute
Yeah.
speech by his choice.
Turns out it wasn't about him.
Okay.
It was about the army.
Yes.
So that was cool. On the same day that was happening, and I think you're right, it's unintentional sometimes,
Yeah.
but he baits his opposition into doing the dumbest things, like crap all over the Army 250 parade.
Right.
Meanwhile, the No Kings stuff is happening all over the nation on the same day. I drove past one of these rallies that was like, medium-sized, not big, in my county. On the side of a road, there were like minimal honks in support of them. My kids saw the signs and said, "No Kings, what is that all about?" And I said, well, those are people who don't like Trump, and because we live in a free nation, they have the perfect right to go out and say that he's acting like a king, and they don't like it
Because of his parade.
and they don't appreciate the things he's doing. And the girls said, who I don't talk to about politics very much, we talk about civics but not politics. The girls, one of them just goes, I think the 9-year-old goes, but the king thing, he was elected. And I said, that is a salient point, my dear. That is
No. It's often, funny how many of these people forget that more than half the country, at least who came to vote, voted for this guy, right? 70, 80 million people. And it's a lot of people. I also thought it was interesting, all the upside down American flags that you saw at various No Kings events. And that's really great and cool, except for when it's Samuel Alito's wife.
Right.
Who does it from a photo from 3 years ago because she was in a spat with a neighbor for a couple days. Then it's like, oh my gosh, I think, our Andrew Stiles pointed this out in the Free Beacon. Joe Scarborough said it was just disgusting, and now it's great.
No, it's wonderful. No, these are always the rules. They just play by different rules.
Yeah.
I will say that I think the riots in LA, which luckily were pretty concentrated and fairly short.
Yeah.
Probably because someone responded with force to them.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Right.
I was nervous about the Marine deployment. Right. National Guard is one thing.
Yeah.
Marines are not used for this.
Right.
I don't think it's wise or good to use them for it. The National Guard standing around federal facilities, yes, so that you don't have Minneapolis.
It's what they have to do when the federal government's being threatened. They have a right
Yes.
to. This is not Gavin Newsom's authoritarianism.
No, and Minneapolis was $500 billion. Is that right? $500 million of damage over just 2 weeks.
Because nobody did anything about it.
Preventing that is good. When a federal law enforcement officer is doing his job, executing warrants he's allowed to execute, someone has to protect him if the city and state in question will not let him be protected.
Right.
So anyway, I think that because that was very bad PR, looked really bad with everything set on fire and Mexican flags everywhere, I think the No Kings folks behaved themselves better that day because of that. What one might call a little deterrence in LA. Yeah.
It just didn't make sense to me that you had somebody burning the American flag and also waving a Mexican flag again around a burning car and not wanting to actually go to or live in Mexico, but they're going to wave the flag of the country that they've left.
No. We really want to stay.
And I hate this country. I'm not going back to the country that I'm waving the flag for. It just makes no sense. Also, I think the Ninth Circuit is going to, if not already, rebuke Gavin Newsom for his saying that the National Guard can't do its job, or that President Trump can't deploy them for this kind of an emergency. My concern is there are other leaders, Democrats in other cities and states saying that they will they will prevent like ICE from doing its job because they basically disagree with them.
Wait,
I don't like what you're doing. So, and suddenly they're all George Wallace.
Yeah. This cracked me up because
at the school.
Brian, I believe it was our friend Brian Stelter, said, look at what he's saying. Because Trump says, I will get serious with any of these folks who will not cooperate with federal law enforcement to do the job of deporting criminal aliens and others who are here illegally. And he's like, I'm going to focus on these cities. And Brian Stelter is like, look, he's saying he's using it as a political tool to go after only blue cities. No, he's going after the cities that refuse to cooperate with federal law enforcement.
It just happened to be.
Which are all blue cities.
Yeah.
It's like, if you weren't, and that's the thing about LA, there wouldn't have been an incursion of
Right.
ICE agents had the city
Done it.
cooperated
Yeah.
with detainers, thereby targeting criminal aliens
Mhm.
and obviating the need for all this other stuff.
Because in these cities, being an illegal alien is not a crime.
Yeah, I know.
But you're here illegally, therefore you're
Well, and there
sort
were
of
all sorts of other warrants
violation,
they were
so.
serving that were for
Yeah,
people,
criminals.
not just people who have charges,
Mhm.
people who have been convicted.
Yeah,
I looked at
convicted
a handful.
murderers.
I looked at
Yeah.
a handful of them, and
Oh.
it was like 2 sexual assaults and
Yeah.
2 assault with a deadly weapon.
Right.
Like,
Does that matter?
convicted.
Do they? No, I mean it's okay.
Anyway,
Is
okay, so I
the-
think,
Mary
anyway,
Catherine-
also just
okay,
like bad
yeah.
politically to
Uh,
stand with those folks. Okay, real quick.
SCOTUS.
No. First DNC.
Okay,
We're
DNC. Dems
we're-
in disarray. Yes.
We are at almost an hour. We can do
we are,
7 more
we are.
minutes.
Okay,
and we'll be fine.
All right,
Okay.
this is it.
The people want what the people want.
I know. Okay, go for it.
Let's talk about Dems in disarray because
Yes.
this leads nicely into it because I do think No Kings went better than I thought it was going to for them because I thought it was going to be incredibly off-putting and nasty and violent, and it really wasn't, but I must stipulate that doesn't mean nothing happened because a person died in the Salt Lake City
Oh,
No Kings Day
Okay.
because someone inside that group or someone approached the group with a rifle, and another
gosh.
designated No Kings peacekeeper with a weapon shot at that guy and hit a bystander. So
Oh my
a person died at one of these events. And methinks that if this were a conservative gathering, it wouldn't be like, look at all these successful, mostly peaceful rallies where one guy was killed. It would mostly be about the guy that was killed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, I do think, again, they keep picking these battles like stick up for Kilmer Abrego Garcia, who has since been brought
Yes,
back to the U.S.,
on
which is the right
charges.
call,
yeah.
and will face charges, among
Yeah.
other things, I think of
Smuggling?
human trafficking.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's that. They're picking that battle and having margaritas with him. They
Yeah.
continue to pick the boys and women's sports hill to die on. And while all this is happening, the new head of the DNC, Ken Martin, actually recently triumphed over David Hogg. His
He did. It was a bittersweet victory, I'm sure.
I think so, because they've hampered their efforts while they were fighting. So Ken Martin was the head of the DNC, kind of the guy you want at the head of the DNC or a party apparatus. He's boring. He's a little vanilla. He's
not the story. He shouldn't be the story.
He doesn't want to be the story. He moves the assets where they need to be. He makes things happen. Okay. David Hogg is like young, insurgent, wants to replace everyone, wants to primary everyone.
So cool.
Those two jobs are in opposition, but they're
Right.
supposed to be working together.
He is the story. Yeah.
So eventually Hogg is gone. They ousted him. As you know, the No Kings
Yes,
crowd is really big.
It was on a technicality involving diversity of candidates. How fitting. And I
Of
wonder how
course.
he feels about this now.
Well, also, the No Kings crowd is really big on electing people without elections and then avoiding their own elections over and over again.
Of course. Yeah.
It's like they're sort of into coronations. At any rate, so he gets picked off, but Ken Martin's troubles are just beginning, apparently. The New York Times did a sort of in-depth piece on him. Just months into the tenure of the new party leader, Ken Martin, the Democratic National Committee's financial situation has grown so bleak
Very serious.
that top officials have discussed whether they might need to borrow money this year to keep paying the bills.
Yeah.
Fundraising from major donors, some of whom Mr. Martin has still not spoken with, and that is a foul, has slowed sharply. At the same time, he has expanded the party's financial commitments to every state and even to far-flung territories like Guam. Now, I'll stick up for him because he might have expanded spending because he had a partner who was trying to primary incumbents, which means he's going to have to spend more money.
Yeah. I mean, going after incumbents who the DNC is supposed to protect them.
Yes.
But he was going to, he wanted to shake things up, obviously. And he had a lot of support from other certain members of the DNC. Isn't that right, Mary Catherine? Like Randy Weingarten?
Oh, yes. Well, while this is happening and all this infighting has been sort of taking the stage and probably cutting down on their fundraising ability, yet another story, which is that Randy Weingarten stepped down from her spot at the DNC. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, I didn't know Randy Weingarten had a spot at the DNC, you are not alone.
Yeah.
As much as I have railed about her and knew she was, spiritually aligned and financially aligned with the Democratic Party and they were partners in every way, I was not aware that she had a super high-powered spot at the actual DNC. And it does seem, in looking over old reporting, that the media never reported this until she relinquished this seat.
Do you don't remember all the times that CNN and MSNBC said, "Oh, and Randy Weingarten of the American Federation of Teachers and member of the Democratic National
member
Committee."
of the Democratic National Committee. That seems pertinent. Like, she's not. Look, I knew everyone knows it's ideological. The teachers union is left, but they sell themselves as the teachers union for all the teachers and all the parents and all the students.
Right.
No, it's just a left-leaning organization that does the bidding of Democrats and apparently literally
school closures.
Runs the DNC.
Yeah.
So Weingarten, who has been a member of the DNC for 23 years, wrote to the DNC chair, Ken Martin, that she had fundamental disagreements with him. I appear to be out of step with the leadership you are forging, the union leader said in the letter dated June 5th. And I do not want to be the one who keeps questioning why we are not enlarging our tent and actively trying to engage more of our communities. Weingarten's departure is the latest sign that the party is still embroiled in factional disputes, and it is likely to only further finger pointing and intensify criticism among Democrats. Weingarten has defended former DNC Vice Chair David Hogg, who was ousted last week from his post on the committee, as he has come under fire for his decision to fund primary challenge and blah, 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 blah. Another union member, big union member, left as well. This seems very problematic for Martin because these power centers are very important.
Yeah, and Ken Martin is reported to have cried as well.
Oh, yeah. Can I also add, not only did Ken Martin cry in that leaked audio, which is not great, and I kind of feel bad for him because the left can really exact some psychic pain when they want to.
Yes, they can.
And I know exactly the kind of people he's up against. Senator Padilla.
Oh, Alex Padilla.
Yeah, Alex Padilla, appointed senator who rushed into a press conference held by Secretary Kristi Noem, did not wear his pin, which identifies him as a senator. I think that was strategic. He wanted to be arrested. He met up with security there because a small female cabinet member of a president who's been almost assassinated twice has a lot of security.
Yeah.
And so this guy comes up on the Secret Service. The Secret Service say, "Hey, sir," and they touch him, and he pushes back on them. And the second he pushes back on them, they have to remove him from the room.
That's it.
And so they remove him from the room, and then it's been a whole saying about Padilla. And I have no sympathy for him because he brought that on himself.
Right.
And if you were a Republican doing the same thing, I would have the same reaction as I did to Joe Wilson back in the day, which is like, look, I agree with this point. Obama was lying. This is not the way to do it. You got yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
You chose the wrong way to do this. He went on the floor and cried.
Yeah, he did too. Right. No, it's and of course fundraised off of it. This whole thing,
I know, and he will get rich off of it.
It's a political stunt. It reminds.
Well, he's now famous. We all do know know who he is.
No, he tried to pull. You can find this still probably on YouTube. John Chaney, the late great coach of Temple, storming into, I think it was John Calipari's press conference, and the same thing. I mean, I think he was gonna fight him. That sort of reminded me of the New York City comptroller. Same thing, just recently had to get removed as well. Made a scene because he's trying to help.
I think it's 5 or 6 have been
illegal immigrants.
Now.
It's a great publicity stunt. You're trying to break away from that, from the pack in a New York City mayoral primary. I guess that was an attempt, but it's kind of pathetic.
It's pathetic.
And this is a real moment for the DNC. This is technically should be a time, as Rahm Emanuel has pointed out, where they could be tearing apart the Trump administration on all sorts of different things, and they're still generally favored to do well in the midterms in 2026, but it's not a sure thing. And
it's not a sure thing. And
Republicans
I would say
are very lucky that they're in a mess right now.
No, look, historically, it is the pattern that they would do well. I think they're going to do well in Virginia and New Jersey in the interim, which will give some wind beneath their wings. But I have an idea for attracting young men to the party, and it includes not crying on camera as much.
Yeah.
So
I feel like that's something Beto O'Rourke might have done too.
They're having some problems in that area. Okay. And then last, Democrats are going to be very up in arms about this one, which is another bad fight to pick because normies are totally on board with it. The Supreme Court in the Skrmetti case, is that how you say it?
Yes, not to be confused with Skrmetti from Natural Born Killers.
It's the high-profile transgender use medicine law from Tennessee.
That's right.
Being challenged all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Biden administration had joined the lawsuit with several transgender youth in Tennessee against SB 1, which was passed in 2023, I believe, in Tennessee, which restricts the use of hormone blockers and other pharmaceuticals and surgical means in treatment of transgender
Right.
issues in kids, in minors. It allows for the treatment to use those things for precocious puberty, other physiological issues.
Sure.
They went to the Supreme Court, ACLU, Biden arguing, Biden, of course, off the case now. The federal government under Trump decided not to be on that side.
Right.
Arguing this is an equal protection violation because it violates on the basis of sex and it discriminates against a suspect class, which is the transgender community. There were other arguments as well, but Justice Roberts wrote for the majority of 6-3 opinion, saying Tennessee has the right to make this law.
Yeah.
It is not discriminatory. It doesn't rise to the level that we need to
the equal protection clause.
Scrutinize it so highly. Yeah. Tennessee is within its rights, according to the federal government and the Constitution, to do this. And to have Roberts knock down all of those arguments, I think is good and healthy. Clarence Thomas in the decision notes that the expert class cannot be a substitute for legislative authority, that they have a place.
Right.
But we learned even in the arguments of this case that their abilities are limited and that they should not be the last word. They are often wrong. Chase Strangio, who was the ACLU lawyer, even had to admit in court that the data is not there to show that suicides go down when you treat children with these methods.
Because that's one of the things that they say, that, kids are killing themselves if they cannot change their gender. Amy Coney Barrett as well has finding out and getting them to admit the other side that people do transition. It's a fact. People do this and then they realize I was mistaken. I want to go back. And because they detransition, as she says, then they don't possess the what you call obvious, immutable, or distinguishing characteristics like race or sex, because it's not immutable then.
Well, I know. To me, that's always been
they're not a suspect class.
Right. Yeah. A logical problem with transgenderism and changing your gender is that it is inherently not immutable once you can sort of flow from one to the other.
Right. And the science is they keep talking about, right now, and the Supreme Court justices are talking about how the science is so uncertain, yet they're so determined to give these puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to young people. It's like, let's slow down. And you see what's happening in Europe, where they have pumped the brakes now and saying that things are not as clear or as good or as promising as we thought it would be. And yet we are now determined to ignore what they're doing in Europe and finding out the hard way. I was thinking about, Michael Schellenberger. He was saying this is like one of the worst medical scandals in history. So good for the Supreme Court.
The liberals, for their part, in their dissent, cite things that just aren't true or real or supported. Yeah. But many people have convinced themselves, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, that this is the truth just because it's the truth. But the data truly is not there. Yeah. And the data also often indicates that this is harmful, it's not just neutral or not there. Yeah. So the AAP said, the Supreme Court's decision today does not change the science. Gender-affirming care remains evidence-based, medically necessary care that improves the health and well-being of transgender youth. More and more we find out that is not the case all the time, but the AAP is interested in signaling, not in being nuanced and smart. And we learned that during COVID. Yep. And as one of my favorite Twitter follows and a lawyer notes, Alex the Chick, she says, they have to keep saying that because it protects you from malpractice. Yeah. Medically necessary is the thing they have to keep saying because they have suggested that people do this to their children. Casey Maddox, also a constitutional law type, says, if 20 years ago, probably 10, you had suggested that people would be trying to compel states to provide for transitions for kids, you would have been deemed a scaremongering phobe of some kind, making flawed, slippery slope arguments until 10 seconds after it happens. And then you're all those things for opposing it, which that is how it feels. Quickly, I'll read one. This is the type of headline we were seeing a bunch of places. Breaking news, a divided Supreme Court, 6-3. A divided Supreme Court cleared the way for states to ban certain gender transition treatments for minors, a polarizing national issue the Trump administration has seized on in initiatives targeting transgender rights. My friend Matt Whitlock notes, it's not polarizing. The Washington Post's own polling found that overwhelming majority of Americans support banning sex change treatments and surgeries for children. The Supreme Court upheld Tennessee's right to take that extremely popular action.
I also see the phrase gender affirming care. You're not affirming. Yeah. This is really dangerous stuff. Okay.
It is. Anything we need to close on to bring up the mood? Oh,
yes,
I will tell you.
The flag. Mary
Yes, the 100-foot flag.
What are you going to say? You will tell me.
I'll add it right at the end. The 100-foot flagpole is up at the
Uh-huh.
White House. Trump, very into building things, has waxed poetic on the stats for
Yes.
this flag.
Yes.
It is pretty magnificent. It's like a car dealership.
That's what I was going
Gaffney,
to
South
say,
Carolina.
Mary Catherine. I was looking to get a new car, and I drove right into the White House South Lawn because I thought that was a car dealership.
That turned out badly for you.
It did turn out
yeah.
badly for me. I said, I guess I can't find a new Subaru here. I love American flags. Don't get me wrong. When I'm with my Knights of Columbus, we pledge allegiance and the whole thing, and we
Right.
hang one outside our house from time to time. I think it's too big. It's too big.
How
It's too big.
dare.
I'm sorry. Only car dealerships are allowed. There should be a law that only.
I'll tell you
'cause
what's
that's how you
big.
find out where the car dealership is.
I'll tell you what's big. This big lib I do this podcast with. That's what's big.
I forgot to tell you, when we hang it at our house, I hang it upside down.
Oh
Yeah,
my
I do.
gosh, we are in distress.
Right.
Yeah, I do. I am sort of amused by the fact that the next Democratic president, should there be one, if they get off these issues that they're
It's gonna be
terribly
fair.
chasing, like even if they're not a fan of the aesthetic, they can't move it. Is it?
Well, I
There's-
mean, they could put up other flags. They could put up the
Interesting.
Think about
could
that.
that could boomerang on
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Okay.
You had something else?
Oh, I was just gonna say I had forgotten this, and I'm proud of my second child. Wrote a Father's Day card. Happy Father's Day to all of our
Oh,
listeners.
yes.
So she wrote a Father's Day card. There's a trophy on the front that says "Awesome, most awesome dad," and on the back there's a note. And I just appreciate her need to fact check the emotional content of her card. She says, "To Dad, thank you for always being there for me. Parentheses, except when you leave for work early."
Oh,
Like she needed to stipulate that, like
Yes.
between the hours of 4 and
Yes,
7 a.m.
you're good.
Sometimes you're not technically there for me, but in general,
Yeah.
good job.
keep all those cards
I know,
because
me too.
they're really sweet.
I
All
just
right.
loved that.
Yeah.
I feel like I would do that. I feel like that's coming from me. Where she's like, "Oh, well,
Yes.
technically."
I still keep like my daughter's cards here. You can see that.
Aw.
Oh no, that revealed my age. Never mind. Put that one away. Okay, Mary Catherine, I believe that wraps up this latest episode of Getting Hammered.
Yes.
Remember, you can subscribe to Mary Catherine's Substack for updates. Special thanks again to Phil Wolf for guest producing this episode for us. And you can still follow me on Twitter at Victorina Mattis. It's so nice to talk to you, all you listeners, again.
This has been so nice. I'm MK Hammer on X, MK Hammer Time on Instagram, mkhammer.substack.com. I will put more updates there as we are rehomed like a sad little puppy.
Mhm.
Just kidding. We're a triumphant, amazing Belgian Mal. Like we just got to find the people who can handle us.
it. Come
That's
on.
that's
Yeah,
what we
yeah,
are.
We're a lot.
Until then, we will be podcasting with all the predictability of a Trump administration.
That's right.
Thank you so much for getting hammered responsibly. We'll be back sometime.